Hello, Abigail here with the Tarotscopes for Gemini season, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising. My Sagittarians, this Gemini season is very transitory. We have so many planetary transitions. It's kind of unbelievable to a certain degree. I'm going to run down the chronological kind of path, but Saturn's entering into Aries mainly, and then all of the personal planets shift signs, and one of them does it even twice. So let's get into that. But this is a really big season of change and transformation. I feel like, well, Taurus season had its own intensities. There was like a little bit of recouping, but now we're kind of officially back into what is technically a really intense year of change and transformation. It really does feel like we're changing our skin this year, and this is a really big season for that. So let's get into when this all happens on May 24th. If you are in a different time zone than EST, it could be May 25th. It's right on the edge of the day, but on May 24th, Saturn enters into Aries. This is a really big transition. It will be back in September, back in Pisces again for a little bit, and then into the new year. Then it will shift back into Aries. But this is the beginning of the end for Saturn in Pisces. So really big shifts and changes. It also goes directly into its, conjunction, not exact conjunction, but into a conjunction with Neptune. So it's not just Aries and Pisces, it's Aries and Pisces really close to another really big outer planet. So keep that in mind. Then on the very next day, we get Mercury going into Gemini, where it's domicile. It won't be there for long because Mercury moves pretty quick when it's not retrograding, but we do get a beautiful domicile Mercury for a couple of weeks. And the day after that, we get the new moon in Gemini, which gets a domicile Mercury rulership. So that's really great. I will say, because of its proximity to the early degrees of Gemini, we are going to have a Pluto trine, which really kind of intensifies the qualities of this new moon. But having that domicile Mercury is going to really soften it. So while it is going to be a really intense, forward looking, backward looking kind of dealing with, if I know when Pluto's involved, it's not just present, it's past and future, and time isn't really real. So we're going to have this kind of whirlwind of a new moon, but then we get that nice Mercury rulership in there. And it's the same for the Sag full moon, which comes later. We have a really kind of intense square to the nodes, but then there's an exalted Jupiter. So it's really beautiful how this is working out. I'm excited for that help. Then we move into June. On June 6th, Venus enters into Taurus. We are officially out of the sign it retrograded in. We're back in domicile. It's a really great place for a little tiny bit, aka 2 days. We get a domicile Mercury to domicile Venus. And then Mercury moves again into Cancer. So just hopping right along. Mercury in Cancer is neither good nor bad, although I don't even qualify detriment and exalted planets as good or bad. I will say domicile is probably the only kind of innate good. And even then, it can present in different ways. And same with detriment planets. They're not bad or anything. They're just really good at surviving. And sometimes we would rather not be that good at surviving. So we have that. Then 2 days, Mercury moves into Cancer. And then the day after that, Jupiter goes into Cancer. And this is really great. We don't get any retrogrades back into Gemini. It is in Cancer solidly. And it's refreshing to have Jupiter in a place where it's happy and exalted and really gets to kind of be more gentle and soft, which no hate to Jupiter and Gemini, but it always does feel as if there's a little bit of a prank or a little edge of a joke involved that we might not find very funny at the time. And then on the 11th, we have that full moon in Sagittarius that I spoke about. And then on the 17th of June, we have Mars going into Virgo, which once again, kind of like neither here nor there, Mars, I will say, can be a little hypercritical. Very good at getting things done, especially when it comes to being very precise about details. Can also be a little nitpicky and a little aggressive about being upset about certain behaviors. But the real strength of this is being able to really get to the root of things while also progressing. Mars can get a bit lost in the sauce and details, but it can also use those details to really progress at a really quick pace. So I'm excited for it. Is it going to be as fun as, say, Mars and Sagittarius? No. But it is going to allow us to really dig deep, especially into the themes that we were kind of discussing and dealing with Mars in Cancer. That sextile is really going to help us understand what happened if we haven't quite gotten there yet. So I'm excited for that excavation. But moving into the cards, so your archetype card is the self. This whole Gemini season is about you taking care of you, you listening to what you need now that you've gone through all of these processes. I think also a lot of really big things are going to be happening for you and a lot of really intense things. And so you need to take care of you in order to make it through and to really come back to self and check in with what you need. A lot of my Sagittarian folks sign up for a lot of really big, beautiful things and commit to them in such a way that they're like, I cannot vary from this path. I'm in it to win it. And they can exhaust themselves and wear themselves out. Now is the time to take some time to recoup and regroup. And I invite you to be a little more gentle on yourself. Not that I think that Sagittarians are hard on themselves in like a critical way all the time, but you're very hard on yourselves in like how much energy you expect yourself to produce over and over and over again. And often, people also have kind of high standards for what you can endure energetically because they see that big Jupiter energy and they're like, wow, so much capacity. Not realizing that capacity is also delicate and needs a bit of space. So just be tender with yourself. Understand that you're going through some really big transitions and you don't need to add anything else to your plate. Moving into your cards, they are interesting and it's not bad or good. It just feels like a lot. So we start off with the universe, and this kind of ties back into what I said about really needing to focus on yourself because so much is happening. This is the world card in a traditional deck. This is about these massive kind of life events all kind of colliding at once and decisions and progress and all of these hopes and dreams really just hitting the same spot at the same point in time. And all of a sudden, you need to have more capacity and you're becoming a different person. And it can be really beautiful because often in the world card, we get a lot of cycles wrapping up. And so we get a lot of gifts. But we're getting gifts as we're processing endings, as we're processing beginnings, as we're moving through new energy and wrapping up old energy. So this is a highly energetic and intense card. And that's why I started this reading being like, please take care of yourself. I also love how this card has this kind of rainbow kaleidoscope type of effect here. And then we have kind of like the northern lights up here. Nice little echo of color. Really tap in and care for yourself. Focus less on what you accomplish and more on what brings out the best in you. If you're making a decision, please try to make a decision less based on the outcome you think is going to happen and more on how it helps you exist and enjoy the world. If you're not going to enjoy the world through any of the process of whatever this thing you want, then what's the point? So yeah, tap in, really listen to what you need. Another reason to do that is we have this moon. It also makes me think, my dear Sagittarians, that the full moon in Sagittarius is really going to be important for you. It is important anyways, but then having this card roll up in a spread feels like it is a lot more important, that there's a lot more in there that you need to be engaging in and listening to. If you ignore anything I say, pay attention to the 11th of June and really try to participate in this moon. Also, because you are Jupiter ruled, you get a different Jupiter rulership and it's going to be in Cancer. And like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with, a Jupiter Gemini. It is detriment, yes. But it doesn't tend to portray the kind of more magnanimous energy that Jupiter in Cancer, say, would give us. It's a really light and lovely energy, and it allows us to kind of care for ourselves and tend to ourselves. So as we make this shift, and it all happens in a few days, we get Mercury in Cancer, we get Jupiter in Cancer all within like 3 days time. Really just lean into it and let the energy change. Release the freneticness that comes with the Jupiter in Gemini and really Breathe in and out a nice, lovely, generous, fully tended to Jupiter and Cancer. Which, of course, we're going to have to get into the tending as we go through the transit. It doesn't just instantly become a well tended Jupiter, but it is an opportunity for especially Jupiter ruled people to really enjoy what's happening in their chart. And definitely check where Cancer is in your chart. Really go in there and be like, oh, what topics are we going to be dealing with the next 12 months? Because that is a Jupiter cycle. But yeah, pay attention to this. This is also the moon card is about our internal world and what's happening on the inside. And I would encourage you, because it does feel like everything's been really frenetic for you for a minute, to really shift your perspective on what internal time is. It's not just so that you can recharge your battery to go spend it again. It is something unto itself. It is necessary on its own two legs, not just with the like, I need to get myself up and going so I can go do more. So yeah, take that time to care for yourself. And part of the reason I say this is because the last two cards are kind of bestie cards. We have the Nine of Wands and the and the Nine of Swords. Both of these are cards of difficulty, of struggle. The Nine of Swords tends to be a card of fears and danger, and I really love this kind of image of these polluting oil thingamajigs, because that's what fear can do. That's what overwhelm can do. That's what it, to me, it doesn't mean that something bad happens to you in Gemini season, but it means that you're really stressed about stuff, that you're really overwhelmed, and that overwhelm is clouding not just the situations you're in, but it's also clouding your ability to have fun and your ability to engage when you're not in a stressful situation. So just be aware of that overwhelm, listen to your body. You don't have to, invalidate these fears, but definitely, ground in and tell yourself that it's okay. In the sense that, like, not that everything's going to be fine and we don't have to worry, but is in like, we have faced these things before and we will face them again. And all of these fears and concerns, while incredibly valid, they do need to be put in check a little bit sometimes, especially if they don't reflect our reality. I think the Knight of Wands is kind of this little last gasp. I will say that I've seen a lot of nice stuff when reading for clients and stuff about Cancer season, especially as we get Uranus into Gemini, a lot of big shifts and changes. So it does kind of feel like Gemini season is this last stand. I do love the representation of this card as like a form of goodbye. It does feel like we're closing out a chapter, especially when you consider this world card next to it. We're releasing what dreams we have said goodbye to. We're releasing the dreams that we've accomplished and have achieved now. And now we're honoring them by, recognizing that we have met them. But it can be a sad goodbye. It's almost like a little memorial to our past self, to the parts of ourself that are no longer necessary for the participation in the life that we now desire. I'm not talking about parts of self as in like innate parts of self. You're like, bye, really important part of self. But the parts of ourselves that have developed and formed in order to survive, in order to become more safe. It feels like there's some survival mechanisms that are on their way out, especially with this Nine of Swords. It feels like some of our coping mechanisms are malfunctioning to the point that they're really causing distress. And when a coping mechanism causes distress, it means that its time is up. And so it's time to say bye. It's time to move on. It's time to move forward, which isn't easy and it's not always fun, but I think it is timely. And I think if you're able to release some stuff in Gemini season, especially with these kind of planetary shifts one after another, I think you'll be really well set up for that Jupiter Cancer transit. And last but not least, we have the Daughter of Wands, which is the Page of Wands in this. This is all in aid of getting back to ourselves, in having the space to be ourselves, in connecting with our passions and desires in an honest way. I also find with the pages it's a stripped down desire. A lot of us have desires and while they are technically our own desires, a lot of times society really informs what those desires look like and what's acceptable for us to want. I think we need to get back to basics with this card. We really need to get back in touch with what we really need, what we really want, and what is actually necessary to us when we pull away societal expectations and other people's beliefs about us and our own beliefs about ourselves. I think there is and I'm going to pull another card from the deck because it seems very appropriate, the Empress card. I think there is another form of you underneath a lot of societal trappings that is more honest and true and more functional. And when you find that, when you can strip that all away, when you can release all these extra things, you'll feel a lot better, even if the world maybe doesn't really see you as having accomplished something. Being true to yourself is an accomplishment in and of itself. All right, my loves, that is my reading for Sagittarians this Gemini season. I love you all. If you have any comments or questions, pop them down below. Also, please like and subscribe, makes my day. And I will see you in a different space and time. Blessed Gemini season.